Hello everyone, Ivor Chester, music therapist, life coach. Today I'd like to ask you a question, which is very similar to the questions I always ask, which is not only what are you listening to, but here's something different. What frequency are you listening to? Back in my 20s, I had a graphic equalizer. For those old school people, graphic equalizer is a device you hook up to your stereo system, and it would adjust the frequencies. It would modulate the frequencies to the room or to your tastes. I went looking for a production company that I was working for at the time, and we were looking at these very expensive multi-million-dollar sound equipment rooms that they wanted to purchase, and they had this guy that was demonstrating it, and he had blown his hearing, and somehow all he had was his upper regions, which normally it goes the other way. You lose your high end and you're left with just kind of that muddy, but somehow his hearing was off and he just had the high end of it, because when he was illustrating, showing us the sound rooms and the equipment and such, every time he plays some music, and he liked to play it loud, whenever he played the music, it just sounded muddy and thump. It just didn't have a good sound to it. And we didn't buy from them until somebody went back and got a different showman, different salesman, and we found out we could adjust the sound, and we ended up doing some degree of business with them. Anyway, with my equipment, it was a massive 20-band graphic equalizer, and I can adjust it, and it was a pretty standard wave that I had built in there, because it was a square room with a closet off to the side and another room adjoining it with a hallway next to it. And I could adjust it where I had good bass sound and I had a nice high end to it. And depending on the music, I had the mid-range brought down unless it was vocal, to which I would increase it. So what? A study came out back in 2008, and I posted them already on the on my webpage. Excuse me, on my Facebook page. There's two of them, and they talk about the sound of fear. Now, one of them talks about a guy, a doctor, who worked in a hospital, and he had an experience where he was sitting at his desk working, and he liked to duel. Not duel, but he used fencing, and his rapier was off to the side. And it was mounted in the middle, and he's noticing that it's starting to wobble, and the ends are shaking, and it's beginning to fluttering, and it's moving. And he gets out a sound check device, and I think it's called an audiometer. But anyway, he gets out this device, and he notices there's an extreme low wave happening below our hearing, which is about 20 megahertz. It's really low, but you can feel it. It's this thrum that you feel, but you may not be able to hear it. And this meter was being able to pick up the wave that was causing the rapier to move up and down. And it was caused by a ventilation fan. And when they recalibrated the fan, fixed the problem, the sound wave went away. This sound wave was responsible, in other studies I've seen, that it caused anxiety on the floor, the work area that they were in, and it increased people's, they had more sick days in the area because of this bass wave that was affecting people subsonically. Now, so what? One more time. You ever been in the neighborhood, you're walking around, you all of a sudden hear this thrum, this big bass sound from somebody who's got himself some new speakers in the back seat, and they're listening to their favorite form of music, and they got that bass cranked, and you feel it. You don't hear the music, you just hear the rumble, the thud of it from them playing the music. That music, and I'm not talking about the brand of music. In other words, I'm not picking on hip hop, or for that matter, they could have cranked Wagner for all I know. But that sound wave brings up fear. NPR had a study that they posted. It was actually from another company, of course, where they talked about the sound of fear as a natural sound that people can hear, but also there's a sound that we cannot hear, and we feel it. It affects our organs, it affects our lymph systems, and it impacts us physiologically and emotionally. That accelerates our fear, gets our hackles up, gives us the cold sweats. People who listen to music that has that accelerated bass range are going to be causing themselves to be a little more anxious or angry. Okay? They may learn to tolerate living in that, but it doesn't mean that they've appropriately managed it. So the so what moment with you, or the call to action, if you will, and hey, Tim, thanks for coming in, is whatever you're listening to. Again, if it's classical, which I've known some people that pump their classical music up really loud, that'd be me. And they also exaggerate the bass. They have a loudness button on their systems, and they crank the bass up. If you're doing that, understand what you're doing to yourself physiologically. I know you may like to feel it, and I've been at too many concerts where the bass is so low that you can feel it in your chest. I remember an Emerson, Lake and Palmer concert, yeah, I'm that old, that it struck me so hard in the chest it took my breath away for a while. Boy, speaking of the sound of the neighborhood, at least it's regular. So if you are listening to something that has an exaggerated bass sound, you may want to crank that down a little bit. All computers have a built-in equalizer that you can find in the sound app, and these things adapt. Of course, the dogs. These things can be adapted to what you listen to or what you need. Quiet music does not have an exaggerated bass line. When you come home, be aware of the sound of the ambience in your office, in your car. You need to bring that down. You notice people complain about traffic. What are they complaining about? A subsonic bass wave brought on by 18-wheelers, by the sound of the tires. And these things cause us to be, again, more anxious, more angry. Now, you can mitigate that by adjusting not really the music you listen to, but how it's played. Okay, so I want you to kind of turn your ears on, be aware, and adapt that equalizer, which again is on computers, but also is on many amplifiers, and just tick that bass up or down, depends, but reduce it so that you can have a more breathable moment, a more expansive moment in your life. Read the articles. I've placed them. They're just up the feed, or yeah, they're just down the feed a little bit, and you can find it, read it. They're very light and easy to read. They're not highly technical. And leave me a note, a call to action to what you're listening to that you may be experiencing something like that. The second article I posted, by the way, is a ghost story where people in this lab are talking about their experiencing ghostly issues. And more than likely, it turns out to be more of this bass wave issue, except for the one about the pub in Coventry. You'll have to read that for yourself. More later. I appreciate your time. Until then, I'm Ivor Chester, music therapist. We'll speak to you soon. Bye now.